Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Hello everyone, this is Jyoti Sharma and welcome back to the session. So today we are going to start with the chapter 1, which is New Kings and Kingdoms in the North India. So first, let me just give the introduction of the chapter. In this chapter, we will understand that how the regional kingdoms rises up in the northern part of India during 8th to 12th century AD. So the medieval Indian history was divided into two parts, which is from first early medieval Indian history, where we see the time bracket from 8th century till 12th century, and the later medieval period from 12th century onwards till the time 1857. So that is the later medieval phase. When we see into the first or the early medieval Indian history, we saw the emergence of small regional kingdom in the northern part of India specifically. In the northern part of India, there were many regional kingdoms, but among those, the prominent one were the Palas, the Gurjara Pratiharas, the Rajputs, the Rashtrakutas, the Pallavas, and the Cholas. Now, if you will look into the map, which is on the right hand side of the screen, you can clearly identify here, this is the Gurjara Pratiharas area. This is the area of Rashtrakutas, Deccan. Gurjara Pratiharas almost at the central or some part of the western. Then we can see the Rajputs. Rajputs basically are located here in the western part, Tomars, Chauhans, and we have here other also which are the part of Rajput kingdoms. Then we have Rashtrakutas, which I have already marked here. The Pallavas. Pallavas come at the southern part of India. Although in this chapter we will understand about the northern part, but these are the kingdoms which were the prominent one during the time period of early medieval Indian histories. So Pallavas we can see here. We can also see the Cholas, very important one. The Cholas were also very important among the regional kingdoms during the early medieval period, and even in the later ancient part, we saw the emergence of Cholas as a very powerful kingdom. We have Palas in the eastern part of India. So these are some important kingdoms which rise during the time period of early medieval Indian history. Now let's see what kind of question we can get from this introductory part. We can get a question like, name the important kingdoms which ruled different regions of India during the early medieval period. So for this question, we have to write the answer. The Palas, the Gurjara Pratiharas, the Rajputs, the Rashtrakutas, the Pallavas, and the Cholas. These were the important kingdoms which ruled different regions of India during the early medieval period. Let's move to the next topic. That is, point-wise, we will cover the important northern regional kingdoms of early medieval India. So we will be starting with the Gurjara Pratiharas. First, we will understand the geography of Gurjara Pratihara. Gurjara Pratihara was basically located in Avanti. Avanti is the area of present-day Madhya Pradesh. So Avanti, southern parts of Rajasthan, and some parts of Gujarat. So that was the area till which the Gurjara Pratiharas were extended. Now about Gurjara Pratiharas, for that dynasty, we saw the first great ruler was the Nagabhatta. Why Nagabhatta was so important? Nagabhatta was important because he was the ruler who has actually protected this dynasty from the foreign invaders, and also we can say from the Malechas, who were trying to conquer this dynasty from the western part of the India or from western part of the subcontinent, from the Sindh region. There were other dynasties also located in Central Asia who tried to conquer this area, tried to conquer the region of Gurjara Pratihara, but Nagabhatta resisted them very, very powerfully. Now we'll see the most powerful ruler. The most powerful ruler means the ruler under whose reign, under whose ruling period, the dynasty has reached at its peak point or at its zenith, became more powerful and prosperous. And that was the time period of Raja Bhoj, or we call him as a Mihir Bhoj also. His time period was from AD 836 till AD 885. He was very powerful ruler and he was very, very successful ruler among all the Gurjara Pratihara. He was also entitled as Adivarsha. He was the devotee of Vishnu, and he has initiated for several policies for his dynasty, which actually led to the growth and development in overall of the region which was coming under the Gurjara Pratihara. The most important contribution of Mihir Bhoja was the capturing of Kannauj. Now, what was Kannauj and why it was so important? Kannauj, present day, is a small city in Uttar Pradesh state. Kannauj was a very, very important region during the time period of medieval Indian history, because from that area, the revenue collection was coming at most of the amount. And due to that reason, Rashtrakutas from the Deccan part, Palas from the eastern part, and Gurjara Pratiharas from the western part, they tried to conquer Kannauj for its areas, or for its significant geographical significance, as it was located near the Ganga and the soil was very, very fertile. So the area was very productive. It was coming at the central part of the subcontinent, and due to that reason, the three powerful kingdoms from three sides, they were in a long battle, they were in a long fight to conquer Kannauj and to took over control of that part. But finally, this tripartite fight, this tripartite struggle, where the three powerful regional kingdoms were involved. Among those, the Gurjara Pratihara, under the leadership of Mihir Bhoja, has finally conquered this area. And that was the most victorious moment for the Gurjara Pratihara, due to which we consider the time period of Mihir Bhoja as the most glorious time period for Gurjara Pratiharas. Now we'll see that after Mihir Bhoja, next his son came into the power, who was the Mahendrapala. Mahendrapala, like his father only, he also tried to conquer more areas and try to expand the empire. But after the Mahendrapala, the empire has started declining. After his succession, the successors of Mahendrapala were unable to handle the unable to handle the areas which were under Gurjara Pratiharas, the area which was conquered by their preceders. So those areas they were unable to handle. There were many other factors. They were lacking administrative skills. They were not having that competitive spirit, and they were not even having good leadership quality. So due to all those reasons, the successors of Mahendrapala was not that much competitive, and due to which the Kannauj finally got into the hand of Mahmud of Ghazni. Kannauj, before this, I would like to tell that when Mihir Bhoja conquered Kannauj, he made Kannauj as a capital of Gurjara Pratihara. And from that time, when the Kannauj became capital of Gurjara Pratihara, from the time period of Mihir Bhoja till 1018 AD, it was the capital of Gurjara Pratiharas only, till the time when Mahmud of Ghazni, who was the ruler of Ghaznewat Empire, which was in the Central Asia, in the parts of Central Asia, he conquered Kannauj. Why he conquered Kannauj? The reason was very simple, because the successors were not that much competitive, so that they can resist the power of Mahmud of Ghazni, and that is why he easily conquered this area. He easily conquered Kannauj, and after that, the dynasty came to an end in 118 AD. Art, craft, and learning under the Gurjara and Pratiharas. So, Gurjaras and Pratiharas were great patron of art, craft, learning, and education. As we know that these rulers were fond of beautiful paintings, they were fond of beautiful art forms, like we can include about poetry also, we can include about the singing, or whether it be talk about the dance form. So they were the great patrons of art, craft, handicraft, and the learning and education. Basically, they were curious to learn, they were curious to understand the new concept. They themselves were very curious. They always want to learn something, and they were well versed with many subjects, many of the rulers of Gurjara Pratihara. In this slide, we will understand about the contribution of Raja Munja, Raja Bhoja, and Raja Shekhar. Although Raja Shekhar was a great poet of that time, and of course, here we will understand first with the one of the most famous poet of that time, Raja Munja. So Raja Munja was one of the most famous poet during the time period of Gurjara Pratihara, and he was a God-gifted poet. He was a God-gifted poet, and he was having abundance knowledge about the poetry, and that is what he has showcased in his work, in his literary work also. When we talk about Raja Bhoja, to whom we also call as Mihir Bhoja, Mihir Bhoja was again a very, very great ruler and most popular ruler of Gurjara Pratihara, and Mihir Bhoja was very, very well versed king who was very much skilled to learn new subject, and he was very well versed with astronomy, religion, grammar, medicine, and architecture. These are some very, very important field in which he has given his contribution. He has actually written about all these areas, and he also have opened up his opinion and his perception about the topics or the subjects which he has covered. So this was about the Mihir Bhoja, who was again the great learner and great ruler of the time, and of course he was a patron of art, learning. Here the contribution of Mihir Bhoja comes for learning and education, because he has contributed more towards the learning of new subjects, which I have just mentioned, and to understand in depth about it. Then there was a Raja Shekhar. Raja Shekhar was one of the most famous and fabulous poet of the time, Sanskrit poet of the time. And one of his very, very famous work was Kavya Mimamsa. Very, very famous Kavya Mimamsa, where he has actually written about the practical poets. Practical, which was the content which was written, it was for the practicality that explains the elementary and composition of good poems. So this is what he has actually written in his work, and these three were the main contributors from the Gurjara Pratihara dynasty, who has contributed much more in art, craft, learning, and education. Now, let's understand one thing here, that the Kannauj, which was the capital of Gurjara Pratihara, was it left out from the beautification? No. So then the answer is, during the time period of Gurjara Pratihara, they have beautifully maintained their capital city, which was Kannauj. They have built beautiful architecture, monuments were there, different types of architecture, buildings, temples. They have built it in such a beautiful way that it clearly indicates that how much the ruler of Gurjara Pratiharas were entrusted and very much inclined towards the art. Now let's understand what kind of question we can get from this topic. So the question is, who wrote the Kavya Mimamsa? So who wrote the Kavya Mimamsa? Just now we have discussed. It is Rajashekhar, the third one. The Palas of Bengal and Bihar. So the Pala dynasty was another very, very important dynasty during the early medieval time period. And this dynasty ruled almost for 4 centuries, for 400 years. Now let's look into the geography, that which all areas were coming under the Pala dynasty. First we saw Bengal, then we have Bihar, then Jharkhand. Now Bengal, that this Bengal is not what we can see today's Bengal. This Bengal is the Bengal which was before the partition of West Bengal of India and the Bangladesh, which has become the separate country. So during the medieval time period, Bengal means today's West Bengal and Bangladesh. So this time, the western part of Bengal, the West Bengal, basically was known as Goda. And the eastern Bengal, which is presently Bangladesh, was known as the Wanga. So this was the geographical location where the Pala dynasty was located. Now let's look into the very first ruler of the Pala dynasty, who has actually established, rooted the dynasty over this region. His name was Gopala, the very, very first ruler of Pala dynasty. And he was one of the most influential, and we can say the most able ruler of the Pala dynasty, who has actually rooted up the base for coming up of his successor. He actually became the ruler or the king of Pala dynasty through election among the high-ranking nobles of the administration, because there was this situation of unrest in the polity during this time in this region, and the Pala emerged during that time with their one of the very powerful leader, and that was the Gopala. And Gopala was not who himself declared as a ruler, or who was coming or who has become the ruler by hierarchy. It was not like that. Gopala got elected by the high-ranking officials of the administration. And why? Because they elected Gopala because they believed that he was the person who can stabilize the polity or administration of this region. So that is why he was one of the most influential and one of the most able ruler of the time. This was about the Gopala. Now when we move to the next ruler, the next ruler was the son of Gopala, the name was Dharampala. Now Dharampala was again just like his father, very, very able ruler. He was even more powerful than his father. And as Gopala has already established the dynasty, he has already established dynasty over 3 regions, which was not less in number. And of course, because Bengal is coming into the fertile zone, so they were getting very good revenue also. So in economical term, in terms of administration, in every sphere, the Gopala has already established and made the base for this, for his successor. So now Dharampala, who was another, the next ruler and the very powerful one, has actually worked to encourage or to boost up the economy in more powerful ways. Like for example, because the agriculture, the revenue part is already coming, now Dharampala has focused on the trading relations. Dharampala encouraged trade relationship with the Southeast Asian countries. This is one of the most important contribution of Dharampala. He was a great warrior, and of course, he fought many wars in which he became successful also with the neighboring kingdoms, because as we have discussed this earlier also, that during this time period there was not only one dynasty, there was not only one kingdom, there were many small regional kingdoms, and those all kingdoms were rivals of each other, because everyone wants power, they want to become powerful, they want more land, they want more revenue. So that is why they all were in a conflict situation every time. So Dharampala, although he defeated many of his neighboring kingdoms and continued ruling over the area which was established by Gopala, and of course Dharampala encouraged trade in a more significant way by extending its trading relationship with the Southeast Asian countries, means not only now internal trading but also for the external trading. Another point about Dharampala is that he was a great patron of Buddhism, and he started following Buddhism. He was a Buddhist, he became Buddhist. So by religion, because he was following Buddhism, so naturally it becomes that he will donate, or he will spend the amount on constructing or making the architecture for the monks, or for any Buddhism, the purpose of Buddhism culture. So for that reason, he founded a very famous monastery, which was known as Vikramshila. Vikramshila was a monastery. Monastery, as we all know, the place where monks live and they, devote themselves towards the Buddha, and where they meditate, where they connect with the God, and not basically, means they are more into their enlightenment path. So monastery is that, sacred place, or we can say holy place, where the monks live in a very pure way, they devote themselves. So he constructed monastery for monks, which was named as Vikramshila, and it became so popular in such a short span of time that after few years, Vikramshila was converted into university, and today it is in Bhagalpur or Bhagalpura in Bihar. Now, another contribution of Dharampala was the founding of Nalanda University. Very famous Nalanda University. Again, it is in Bihar, and it was the main center for Buddhist studies. Now, when we next look into the ruler series, there is Devpala, who was the son of Dharampala. And Devpala, just like his father and grandfather, he was also, among the Pala rulers, was the very able one. And Rajput kingdoms during that time were very powerful. But when we look into Devpala, he was very able, very brave ruler, that he became such a strong competitor for Rajput kingdoms also. And due to that, Devpala was able to consolidate the dynasty which he got in a legacy from his father and grandfather. And he tried to retain that power, both in administrative and economic terms. He continued the trading relationship with Southeast Asian countries, which his father has started. And of course, he also promoted the internal trades also. But very, very unfortunately, what happens? The successor of Devpala were not that much competitive, and they were very weak, and due to which the dynasty started falling down. Before going into that, we see that Devpala, again, just like his father and grandfather, was a patron of art, craft, and even the architecture. So during the time period of Devpala, he has constructed Mahabodhi temple. Mahabodhi temple is in Bodh Gaya, and Bodh Gaya is in Bihar, as we all know. So he was again a patron of buildings. So he constructed Mahabodhi temple during his time period, and he always promoted people for art and craft, learning and education. But as we just um, uh, discussed about the late or the successors of Devpala, that they were not very, very powerful, and due to their weak competitive spirit, the dynasty started falling down. And with the coming of end of 12th century, the dynasty completely fell down and ended up. The dynasty which ruled for almost 4 centuries. The dynasty completely ended up with the end of 12th century. And with the replacement of Pala dynasty, the new dynasty emerged in the same area, and that dynasty was the Sena dynasty. So this was about the Pala of Bengal and Bihar.